just start by gently turning and just kind of pressing on the whole roll. And that starts the felting process going again. I'll have to have another segment that talks about making pre-felts, which is what I started with when I did this. But at this point, the little ends of the wool fibers are working their way through the openings in the silk chiffon scarf. And there's somebody honking a horn outside. Probably a train. There is room for all these little fibers to move around and get caught up. After I do that a few times, I'll unroll it and roll it the other direction. You don't have to unroll the whole thing. You can just sort of unroll it and roll it the other direction as you go, which is kind of nice. I'll even pat it and going this way. And as I'm going, I'll eventually graduate from gently patting almost to squishing harder and then really rolling and rubbing over the course of 10 minutes. I don't really time it, but 10 minutes or so, and just keep unrolling and re-rolling until I can look and see that the pre-felts, which you can see right here, is sticking into the silk. And then I can take the stuff off and do the next step. In this part of the Nuno felting, what I typically do is everything sort of starts adhering as I have the rolled up donut, but once I peel everything off, there's always some places that are a little bit loose or that aren't quite meshing in, and so rather than work it as a whole, I'll work flat and actually rub each individual piece and try to get the edges worked. So typically I'll sit here and just work each individual motif and try to make sure that I'm getting the ends working through. And you can actually see, you know, where your piece is on this side, you can see the edges, especially where it was cut, working through the back side. So you can kind of keep an eye on that, and when you see that start to happen, you know that everything is going to hold together, because the next step, you're going to wad everything up and really rub it and throw it and get the folding process going, where all the pieces are going to shrink and you're going to get all the interesting texture in your silk chiffon. But right now I'm spending some time just gently massaging my piece all the way up and down on both sides. Okay, in my next step, I've got everything was massaged, so now I'm going to add some more hot water. My thing is cooled off, and adding hot water kind of speeds up the process again. And I'm just going to I'm going to squeeze out my excess. I have a tray here, put water in. I'm going to throw and rub my piece all over. And this is more of the fulling process or the shrinking process. You could do this with any wool fabric. You can get a fold of wool woven fabric or knitted fabric, or fold wool felt. So I'm just going to keep doing this for another 5 or 10 minutes. It's great if you're frustrated. You can get out some physical frustrations by putting a lot of energy into this. One of the things you want to try to do when you're doing your throwing is every once in a while open it up and check and make sure that nothing's folding over and sticking to itself. You know, kind of smooth it out. You don't want to pull on it because you'll pull the wool threads back out of the fabric, but you do want to make sure you don't have a lot of folding and creasing, or you might end up with something that doesn't look very much like a scarf when you're done. The last step I do is, before I rinse it, is I'll take it, and I'll do this typically with almost all my pieces. I'll fold it, and I'll do a process that kind of smooths out the surface of the felt. I'll roll it up on itself, and then kind of rub flat so that it smooths out, and it kind of helps to lock the fibers down into the felt. and gives you a little bit smoother result than just the fuzzies from all the throwing and rubbing. So I'll move my folds around and do this different directions, maybe half a dozen times, just to kind of smooth everything out as best I can. Then I'll rinse it, and I do a final rinse with a little bit of white vinegar in it. I've got maybe a quart of water in here. I'm just going to give a little slash of white vinegar, maybe a tablespoon or two, and then it works like a conditioning rinse almost for the wool. It neutralizes the pH, the alkaline pH of the soap, and makes the wool happier in the long run. So I'll soak that for a few minutes, and then I will rinse it out again, and then hang the piece up to dry. And I'm done.